Hi, this is Mark. Congratulations, you have found this amazingly awesome show. Chances are you're listening to it right now on whether it's iTunes or Stitcher Radio or some other mobile app that allows you to stream this amazingly awesome show to your ear holes. And I can't stress how awesomely amazing this show really is. But did you know that you can also catch the latest episode of this show on the Tangibound Network? That's right. Go check out tangiboundnetwork.com. You can look them up, and you can listen to it right there. It's even mobile friendly. What more could you ask for? Which means you can pull it up on your iPhone or your Android, even your Windows phone. Yeah, who has one of those? But still, point remains, you can do it. You can do it. Check it out, tangiboundnetwork.com. Listen to this show, the latest episode, every time. Check it out.
Hello, everybody. This is the MLBeers podcast with your hosts, Andrew Sherman and Philip Corwin. Philip, how you doing today?
I'm doing well. How are you doing?
No, I'm doing pretty well. I'm a little bit tired this morning. I, woke up at 4 to watch the Japan series or the Nippon series, which is the MLB's, which is their version of the World Series. And I was hoping that my Yokohama Bay Stars would win. I guess I won first by falling asleep by the 5th inning and then just getting a nice sleep. And then That's
what happened to me watching Game 6.
Yes.
Of this World Series. I legit fell asleep on the couch at like 9:15, 9:30.
Mm-hmm.
And I woke up and the game was over.
Yeah, that's how it kind of was for me in a sense. I was like, all right, this is 11 o'clock. Monday I had to go to the jail and all that stuff, for school. And I'm like,
quote unquote, for school. You mean you're a bad boy.
Yeah, I guess. Whatever floats your boat, right? Well, anyway, I was just like, all right, it's 11 o'clock. This game seems like it's going to take forever. I'll just go to bed, listen to it on my phone, and just go to sleep. Well, probably 30 to 45 minutes later, I woke up and I finally heard that the Astros won. I was like, God dang it. And then I just went to bed. But
that Game 7, it kind of, petered out for me.
Yeah.
It's just because they did so much. The Astros just went up 5-0 in the second inning.
Yeah, and we'll talk about that in a moment. A moment. But I just wanted to say that, I woke up this morning, tried to watch the Nippon series, and I fell asleep by the 5th inning, and then I, woke back up, and my Yokohama DNA I thought it was Dina, but it's actually DNA. Bay Stars lost to the Fukuoka SoftBank Hawks, and it kind of leads up, what we kind of interluded to the World Series. The final swing of the bat, the final pitch, the final catch has already done. We are officially in the offseason, and we're going to talk about the World Series, recap the season, things that we liked from the season. And, of course, we're going to talk about our off-season plans and, getting back to what we were talking about earlier, just a couple seconds ago with Phil. Game 5, this great, magnificent game that I just couldn't stay up any longer for. And then Game 6.
You go into Game 6, and the Astros did what they needed to do.
Mm-hmm.
They had to go back to Game 6 being up.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and then they were up by 1, and then they lost by 2, I believe, if that's correct. Yeah. They were up by 1 early, and then the Dodgers got to them later in this. in the series, and they won Game 6, and it went to a Game 7, which by Game 6 and 7 we were kind of tired in a bit, and you already talked about Game 7 being a dud,
especially after that Game 5. That Game 5, when it went extra innings, there was so much excitement around the offense. The pitching was not the greatest because it's a 12-13. LA scores 3 in the first, and then the Astros turn around, tie it up in the fourth by scoring 4. Then turns around, each team scores 3 in the 5th inning.
Mm-hmm.
So there wasn't a lot of good pitching happening.
Yeah, and
but the offense was able to make up for it. So you go into Game 6 with that kind of energy, and the Astros did what they needed to do. I think if the Astros went down, if they would have been down going into Game 6, it wouldn't. Well, yeah. If the Astros would have been down 2-3 going into Game 6, I don't know if they would have been able to win at all.
Yeah, they had to win Game 5 to get that little bit of momentum.
Yeah, they needed the momentum going in because they lost the game before. And so they needed a little bit of momentum, and they needed the added advantage of knowing that Game 6 isn't necessarily – it can't be the last game of the season.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly.
They have a little bit of leeway to play with.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. Go ahead.
No, that's pretty much it. Just going into it, it allowed them to play a kind of a different type of ball game.
Yeah, exactly. And going throughout the whole. Yeah, go ahead.
They didn't need to go full on hands on deck.
Mm-hmm. Not yet. Not that they needed
as
to.
Much.
Yeah.
And Verlander did exactly what they wanted out of him again.
Mm-hmm.
In that Game 6, gave a solid 6 innings, and then they used Musgrove, Gregerson, and Liriano.
Mm-hmm.
Musgrove is led up to one run, and Verlander led up 2.
Mm-hmm.
And that was the 6th inning.
Yeah.
And the Dodgers were getting good pitching out of Hill, even though he only went 4 2/3. But the Dodgers, this was kind of a do-or-die situation.
Mm-hmm.
So they needed to throw all hands on deck to make sure it got to a Game 7.
Yeah, exactly. And I was just going to, real quick go through, each of the games. And in Game 1, Dodgers won 3-1. Great pitching out of both starters, Dallas Keuchel for the Astros and Clayton Kershaw for the Dodgers. Kershaw went 7 innings, gave up 3 hits, 1 earned run, 11 strikeouts, and that 1 run, of course, is always a freaking home run with Kershaw. And then Dallas Keuchel, he went 6 2/3, gave up 6 hits, 3 earned runs, 1 walk, 3 strikeouts, 2 of those being home runs. And I mean, that was a great beginning of the series, and for the most part, that's what I expected. Close games, nothing, extraordinary numbers-wise, runs-wise, like
you
Game 5.
You could really argue that each game was like that except for Game 5.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Game 5 was kind of that outlier.
Mm-hmm. Well, and also Game 2, where the Astros won 7-6, where it was Rich Hill versus Verlander. Verlander went 6 innings, gave up 2 hits, 3 earned runs, 2 walks, 5 strikeouts, 2 home runs, and Rich Hill only went 4 innings. And we kind of talked about that last episode, where these guys have to go 5+ in order to have great games. And Game 1, Kershaw went 7, Dodgers won. Verlander went 6 innings, Astros won Game 2. And that's what it was kind of back and forth with. And really looking at the box score, Houston scores first in the third, which Houston has been kind of that's been kind of their MO, is that they've always scored first, and when they do, they win most of the time. I'm not gonna say every time, but they win most of the time. They scored in the third, then the Dodgers scored, tied it up in the 5th. They score 2 in the sixth, and then the last 4 innings, it went 8-9, tied the game up, and then the Dodgers gave up 2 in the top portion of the 10th. Then the Dodgers got some runs back. Then then Houston got 2 runs, and then the Dodgers just didn't have enough to win it in the 11th. They only got 1 run and didn't tie it up. But it also, another weird thing too is that the Dodgers Dodgers had 6 runs, but they only had 5 hits compared to Houston's 14, which was really, really interesting for me. And that was, if you're trying to compare which one from Game 2 or Game 5 of the series, I really definitely have to say that Game 5 really takes the cake, but this also kind of Game 2 kind of showed the other end where it's going to be more tight games, even though it was a little bit more high scoring, just there was going to be tighter games. And then Game 3, Astros won. I think it was their first win ever at home in the World Series. They beat the Dodgers 5-3. They scored 4 in the second and kind of just cruised for the win. Again, it's kind of hard when you're down by 4. Even though it was early, Dodgers scored once in the third, but Houston got 1 in the bottom of the 5th, and then the Dodgers' final 2 runs came in the 6th, making it 5-3. And again, it shows that the Houston Astros had 12 hits and the Dodgers had 4. And just to look at the pitching real quick, Darvish, we're gonna get into it about him in a moment, but he only went 1 2/3 of an inning, and then it went Maeda, Watson, Morrow, Sangrani, and Stripling, and it's just like that is a ridiculous amount of bullpen usage. But also,
and that's kind of MO with the Dodgers though. This whole series,
mm-hmm.
They were using their bullpen a lot.
They were, and this game was kind of like this is kind of serious. Darvish being that trade deadline acquisition, ready for the World Series, and he only goes 1 2/3 inning. And of course, we'll talk about Game 7 about him, but
both games.
Yeah, both games. I believe he was the first or the second person ever to not go. I think it's like 4 or 3 full innings or something like that. It was a really weird stat that Fox had, but it was just interesting to see that he was like the first person not to get past through, like the starter not to get past 3 innings of ball. But on the other side, you had Lance McCullers going 5 1/3 of innings, and then Peacock going 3 2/3. So it's you have 6 pitchers on one side, then you have 2 on the other, and they had shut down baseball. I mean, McCullers did give up 3 runs, 4 hits, but he had 3 strikeouts. He had 4 walks. But Brad Peacock really came out and had 4 strikeouts and 1 walk and really shut down, even though they had 4 hits, really shut down this Dodgers offense, which, was spectacular, in the divisional series and the league championship series. So on to Game 4 of the World Series. The Dodgers kind of came back. They won 6-2. They actually finally out-hit Houston, which Houston only had 2 hits compared to the Dodgers' 7. But also the game, the first 4 innings were a great pitcher's duel in a sense. They were shut out through 5, and then Houston scored in the bottom of the 6th. LA answered in the 7th, scoring 1, tied it all up. And then in the top of the 9th, the Dodgers somehow found the ball, and they scored 5 runs, and then Houston could not come up with that. They only scored once, making it 6-2. And you have to give credit to Alex Wood. This guy, came through, he had a little bit, came through the system a little bit. I know he was part of a trade, but he went 5 2/3 innings. He only gave up 1 hit, 1 run. He only walked 2 guys and struck out 3. Yeah, go ahead.
His whole World Series line is a 1.17 ERA and 7 2/3 innings pitched.
Mm-hmm.
He literally let up 1 run, 1 hit, 2 walks, and 6 strikeouts.
Mm-hmm. And that's
the dude was nails.
Yeah, he was phenomenal. And of course, we'll get to that in a moment. And we got to give shout out to Charlie Morton. He went 6 1/3 innings, gave up 3 hits, 1 earned run, and he had 7 strikeouts. But it was all about the bullpen for the Houston Astros. They just couldn't keep him down, especially in the 9th, where Giles couldn't, gave up 2 hits, 3 earned runs. He gave up 1 walk, and Musgrove, he went up 1 inning. He finished the 9th, but he also gave up 2 runs, which one of them was a home run, and that kind of did it for them. And if you really look at it too, Jock Peterson, a guy that we hardly ever talk about, he came up in the clutch. Even though he had 2 strikeouts in the game, he got the hit and he got the home run in the 9th, and it was really good for him to see that. Bellinger came alive in that game too. He went 2 for 4. Even though he had 1 strikeout, he scored twice, and that's kind of been the good thing. But this is where I believe this is the game, or it was the game before. It was the game after. It was Game 5, which now we'll be talking about, where it was 13-12. This was the game that kind of set the bar for everything else, and also got George Springer, in action. He went, in Game 5, he went 2 for 3. He had 3 walks in this. He had, he scored 3 times, 1 RBI. And I'm just like, this is where it's going to be the difference maker. And we kind of talked about how, I think it was in the last episode, we kind of talked about how Correa needed to be that guy in the league championship, where he wasn't doing so well in the divisional series. He came through. He did well in the league championship. Springer kind of fell back a little bit in the league championship, and it was kind of the guy that we needed to worry about. And he, actually showed up. And I'm kind of, it's just, I was about to say, I'm just kind of scared to look at this, the pitching line for everybody. And I'm just like, Kershaw, 4 2/3 innings, Keuchel 3 2/3 innings, and then they just traded pitchers, one after the other. Maeda was in, Gregerson, Watson, McHugh, Morrow, Peacock, yada 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 yada. Had 7, and I mean 7 pitchers for each team in that game, and it was just like, wow, what's really going to happen next with these teams? And again, Bellinger came, Bellinger hit that game. Forsythe, he's been quiet, but he came out in this game. Austin Barnes came out and actually hit. Peterson, he wasn't really in. Turner became the DH of that game, which Peterson was in Game 4. He actually came and, dominated as a pinch hitter. But you got to give Andre Ethier, a little bit of a shout out. Wait, that is another game that Ethier was part of. But you do have to kind of give him a shout out, though, because he's been he's been struggling all season, and he finally gets some opportunities in the World Series. So on to Game 6, kind of the, another, any game now is kind of, doom or gloom. And Game 6, like we kind of brought it up earlier, Game 5 was this all-inspiring home runs everywhere type of game, and then it just went downhill. The game was actually closer in Game 6. It was 3-1 Dodgers. Houston scored in the third, being the first, being the team to score first. And then the Dodgers scored in the 6th and the 7th to make it 3-1. Again, Dodgers didn't have a lot of hits. They only had 5 compared to the Astros. But Rich Hill went 4 2/3 innings, while Verlander went 6. And this was kind of the anomaly out of all of this, and a little bit of Game 5, where, like I said, they got to go 6+ innings. And the Dodgers, starting pitching, only went 4 2/3 and still was accredited for the win. But also, another great performance by Justin Verlander. You kind of brought it up earlier, how, he gave up 3 hits, 2 earned runs, struck out 9, though. It's great to see him, winning a World Series title after a couple miscues with the Tigers. And yeah, go ahead.
No, it was just nice to see him be able to go out there and just dominate like he used to early in his career. Because that's what it reminded me of.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and the same thing in Game 2 also.
Yeah, when he would go out and he would only let up to maybe 3 runs, and the rest of the time the dude was just nails.
Mm-hmm.
Just on it, and his stuff just looked really filthy.
Mm-hmm. And I agree. It was just he did well, and it came, just when it all got through, he did well. It was a great pickup by the Astros and all that stuff. And then finally, Game 7 of the World Series. Houston fans and Joyce, congratulations. You won the World Series. Any Houston fan seeing this, winning the World Series, all-time high. The Dodgers fans, not so much. They lost at home, and they lost by 4, and nothing happening. Pitching again, Darvish going 1 2/3 innings. McCullers only went 2 1/3. Again, kind of being another anomaly. But this game, it just seemed like it was over and done quick, to the point before it even got to the 3rd inning. Before they even the Dodgers got to hit in the bottom of the 2nd.
Just the way the Dodgers hit in the 1st inning and that 2nd inning after they were down 5-0. They were just, I don't know. No one on that team had a multiple hit game in Game 7.
No, not at all. And I'm actually looking at this right now.
Yeah, Bellinger struck out 3 times. Peterson struck out twice.
Mm-hmm.
Peterson left 5 guys on base. Puig left 4. Bellinger left 6. There was just no good hitting.
It was a bunch of desperation. And that's, when you're down like that, you're going to see a lot of that. But
especially in the younger guys like Bellinger, Jock Peterson, and guys like that,
mm-hmm.
and Corey Seager, they're going to go out and score 5 runs with 1 swing.
Mm-hmm. And, just for, normal fans of baseball, this was, again, it was over and done with. This is the best
series we could have hoped for.
Yeah.
These were technically the 2 best teams in the league.
Mm-hmm. If you want to switch out Cleveland, again, that's up in the air. But, yeah, you are right. 2 of the best teams from the one from the National League, one from the American League. It was a darn good series. It was a great series. Game 7 kind of was just a dud, and for me, it was over by the 5th, and just normal baseball fans probably left the game after it was the 5th inning because of what we said.
Oh, yeah, no, I'll be honest. I turned it off about the 6th inning.
Yeah, exactly. And I just kind of left it alone, to be honest with you, because, again, it was
I would flip back to it. I was, randomly checking in on it, but No, just by that point, just the way the Dodgers were playing and the Astros had taken that lead, it just wasn't entertaining anymore.
It reminded me, and I had to. I know, I mean, it was a Cardinals thing, but it kind of reminded me of Game 7 in 2011. You had Game 6. It was back and forth. It goes into extras. Both teams are scoring. Texas would have clinched the World Series. One strikeout away, blah, 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 blah. David Freese hits the home run. Into Game 7, there was still that moment, the momentum shift, and it was incredible. And it was an incredible shift for the Cardinals. Texas scores twice in the first inning. Cardinals answered back, tying it in the bottom of the first. And then by the fourth inning, I believe, or the fifth, it was kind of over and done. It was 5-2 Cardinals. The same thing was going on with the Rangers. They were just swinging and a miss, swinging and a miss, swinging and a miss. And then I believe it was the seventh inning, it was the seventh inning. They scored the sixth run, the Cardinals did, and it was just over. And, I was celebrating. I was happy, but it wasn't just, it wasn't like a great Game 7 like 2016 was. But again, no. Cardinals won the World Series. I was happy about that anyways. But just going through the comparisons, remembering all the World Series, it was just that it was very interesting to see how this game was just a complete dud. And I know there's been some games in the World Series where they've been complete duds, but through my recollection of being through it and being a fan, it was kind of a dud, comparing it from 11 to this year's. And so, Phil, I got to ask, we got to talk about Yu Darvish. He's the elephant in the room, and it was just atrocious to see him go. And we kind of questioned, on our Twitter group, and of course, if you want to join that, ask us about it. But just, we kind of brought it up. How do you think would have been better to have Alex Wood in or Yu Darvish in for Game 7? And also, we kind of had the speculation that Darvish, even before Game 6 happened, we kind of speculated that Darvish would get into Game 6 and maybe Wood would start 7 and yada, 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 yada. But
hindsight, yeah. I bet the Dodgers are looking at it where they are thinking they should have started Alex Wood.
Mm-hmm.
But it's 2020. And at the moment, I would still have started Darvish.
Mm-hmm.
Even though he had a bad game 1, game 3?
3.
Yeah. Even though he had a bad game 3, you still got to go with him because, he's one of the more, he's a well-rested pitcher. He's going in with an extra day off.
Mm-hmm.
So you just think that, hey, he's going to be able to get his command under control and do well. And it just wasn't the case. And I don't think the Dodgers could have planned for that.
Mm-hmm. And that's, kind of the same thing here. I don't think the Dodgers really planned for that. They expected Darvish to do well like he did in the in the NLDS and the League Championship Series. And it was just a total flop. And of course, Game 3 was in Houston. There's going to be some, that place was rocking. I believe when I looked at it, hold on real quick. It was roof was closed. Once you have an enclosed, once you're in an enclosed facility, the echo is going to be crazy. And he probably just had a bad night, had the fans there. But also, Houston knows him pretty well. They were in the same division. And so They saw him more than twice every season. And that's where, first game, I understand, where it was a bit hectic. But in Game 7, you're at home. You have the 10th man with you, the fans. It's an open stadium. Nobody's going to be booing at you, nor it's going to, envelop around you. And it just was the same thing again. And Houston just got to him perfectly.
Yeah, there's no bite to his slider.
Mm-hmm.
He was leaving things in the zone, and it was clearly obvious. Like that home run George Springer hit was just insane.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
and that's not his second one, the first one of that game.
Mm-hmm.
And you could just tell that Darvish's stuff wasn't there. So after that first inning, it's kind of weird that the Dodgers just didn't go ahead and pull him.
Mm-hmm.
And keep it to a 2-run deficit and throw Alex Wood out there, because they ended up using Kershaw for 4 innings.
Yeah.
So why not send Kershaw out there in the second?
Yeah, or even Wood. I mean, Wood had a good 2 innings. He struck out 3 guys, and that was it. He didn't give up a score. He didn't give up a run. He didn't walk anybody. He had a good outing, and I think, Dave Roberts really trusted Yu Darvish. He was the guy. He was the prized possession, like I brought up at the trade deadline.
He was the big trade acquisition that was going to propel them to the World Series.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that's where
the Dodgers were already online to be in the playoffs, but Yu Darvish was going to be that difference maker.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. And it just didn't happen. And, besides all of that, what other things did you like about the World Series? I know that you talked about that he didn't have a bite on a slider, which, I guess all the pitchers were complaining about the World Series baseball, saying that they were possibly juiced and all that stuff. And I'm just like, Game 5 kind of set the tone in a sense, but then it was just like every other game's been, low scoring, close games.
Yep. And what I liked about the series, it was a little bit more back and forth than I thought it would be.
Mm-hmm.
Game 1 goes to Dodgers. Game 2, Houston. Game 3, Houston. Dodgers. Game 4. Game 5. There was no team that really rattled off 3 wins in a row, and the other team was having to play down the whole time.
Not only that, just to add, nobody swept at home.
Nope.
Like Houston and the ALCS and the ALDS, the Dodgers, the same thing. Nobody swept at home, which was a great thing because that meant that these teams were evenly matched, and it went to a Game 7. But yeah, I totally agree with you on that.
But it was just a good series up until that. I can't even argue that Game 7 was a bad game. It was just so melodramatic.
Yeah, that's actually probably the perfect word to say that, because again, it was done by it felt done by the 4th,
Yep.
And liking the Dodgers, I was just like, man, this is just bad.
Tough to watch.
Yeah, it was just tough to watch.
Yeah, it's just. If you're a Dodgers fan and by the 3rd inning, by the bottom of the 2nd, you're down 5-0 in Game 7 at home.
Mm-hmm.
That just sucks.
Yeah.
And, we talked about before how well Altuve had been doing in the playoffs, just on a roll.
Mm-hmm.
In the World Series, he got shut down. He only hit 194.
Mm-hmm.
And he struck out second most for the Astros. Struck out 7 times.
Mm.
Bregman hit all right. Evan Gattis came to life. But George Springer, the dude was just a monster during the World Series.
Yeah. I can't
8 strikeouts,
disagree
5
with
walks, 5 home runs, 3 doubles, 11 hits. The dude, kind of just put the team on his back and said, all right, follow me, let's go.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I mean Correa, he had 276. It wasn't over 300, but he actually got some hits.
Yeah, he came through with 2 home runs.
Yeah,
and Alex Bregman hit 2 home runs.
Mm-hmm.
Jose Altuve hit 2, and I think one of the more interesting stats of this series is total. Each team scored exactly 34 runs.
Really? I did not know that.
Yep.
That is very, very interesting.
But to me, that points to it that the Astros had more timely hitting, more clutch. You know, we can't measure clutch or who's a clutch hitter, or any of that.
Mm-hmm.
But they came through when it was needed.
Mm-hmm.
More than what the Dodgers did. Dodgers hit. Yeah, the Dodgers hit. Oh my gosh, there we go. Dodgers hit 205 as a team, compared to the Astros with the 230. You know, pitchers were hitting in this series, so it kind of sways it. You know, when you got guys who have a 0 batting average with 1 or maybe 2 at bats, but still, there's a 25-point difference.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and
there's the same amount of runs were scored.
Yeah.
So that 25 points is being made up by the Astros, who came through in the clutch.
Mm-hmm. And another thing, go ahead.
They took the advantage when they needed to. They knew when they, you know, it was kind of, you know, when a pitcher like Kershaw or Hill was kind of on the ropes, they knew that this was their moment to seize.
Mm-hmm.
Because they most likely weren't going to get another one with the Dodgers bullpen.
Yes. And, you know, I kind of brought it up, you know, earlier, just how hitting, you know, became a factor for the Dodgers, and it just seemed like every game, except for 2, they didn't hit a lot. They only, you know, they were always under, you know, the Houston Astros getting those hits. And
Bellinger struck out 17 times.
Yes, 17 times. He broke Aaron Judge's record for postseason series strikeouts. And I'm just like...
Yeah, his on-base percentage was only a 172.
Pretty abysmal.
Yeah.
And I like the kid, you know?
Yeah. But from when I was watching the games, the Astros just exploited... He's a left-handed hitter. Mm-hmm. So they exploited that bottom left-hand corner of the strike zone down by his knees, and he would overswing it and it'd swing over top.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and
they weren't leaving. Like, he can hit the inside pitch because he has a nice inside-out swing, but he can't. He had it's all year. He had problems with that bottom end of the zone next to his knees,
and
he
which is
would pick up the ball. And it, you know, curveball, slider, fastball, you know, 2-seamer, barreling in on that inside strike zone, down and around his knees, and he wasn't able to connect with it.
And, you know, kind of another thing, too, real quick to kind of wrap it up, 2 things, is that, first of all, that's kind of the sweet spot for any left-handed hitter, is that low inside pitch. And if they connect, more than likely they're going to be hitting home runs or, you know, getting, you know, doubles and all that stuff. Another thing for me in this World Series is the lack of stolen bases, especially with this Houston Astros team. They only had 3. Cameron Maybin had 1, Bregman had 1, and Jose Altuve had 1. But it was I just wanted to see more stealing opportunities, but then again, with all the hitting that they've had, with everybody being, you know, patient at the plate, it's kind of hard to, you know, steal when everybody's getting a hit. So, I mean, anything else that you would like to add about the World Series? Any other thoughts?
That I bet if I told you that Charlie Morton was going to be the best pitcher on the Astros for the World Series, you would laugh at me.
I probably would. Because I would think...
The dude went 10...
Yeah, go ahead.
The dude went 10 1/3, 11 strikeouts, only allowed 5 hits and 2 earned runs.
And
he pitched in 2 games and started one and saved a game. No, started the game. I'm sorry.
Yeah, started a game, no saves, even though
and then
it seemed
came in
like
game 7 for 4 innings and just shut it down.
Yeah. Yeah. And, you can kind of make that argument with the whole Justin Verlander. You brought up that he went .95 ERA in the league championship series. He went 12 innings, gave up 5 hits, 5 runs, 2 home runs, only walked 2 people, struck out 14.
And struck out. And the fact that he only walked 2.
Yeah, is still, it's still phenomenal.
And just Verlander, that whole series was just attacking the zone.
Mm-hmm. Something that I was wishing for every other pitcher to do, because every other hitter was just either looking at the pitch or, blatantly swing with their eyes closed. And just to, going back to Morton and going back to Verlander, their opponent's batting average for respectively, Morton 143, Verlander 128, and they both had a whip of .58. So they were phenomenal during that stretch.
And you don't expect that out of Charlie Morton.
Mm-hmm.
And going forward, Astros fans got to be happy what they got out of Lance McCullers, Charlie Morton this postseason.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it definitely.
Because if they can,
go ahead.
If they can turn around and take this momentum into 2018,
mm-hmm.
the Astros are going to be just as scary.
Mm-hmm. And that's kind of the one thing that might be not just only scary for them, but also kind of scary for for the years to come. This might be a dynasty. The Cubs still have the opportunity to have the dynasty. I know that's another team that didn't make it to the World Series, but last year everybody thought Cubs dynasty gonna win multiple championships. They still have the opportunity. Houston, you saw the rise and fall. They had the players, and then now they finally won a championship. Could we see a dynasty with this team? And that's going to be up in the air.
Bregman, Correa, and Springer.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, most definitely.
Yeah. But no, that's really about it for the World Series.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And you know what? Let's take a little break real quick, because I know that we have a lot more to say, not about the World Series, but we're going to talk about the whole season, our thoughts on the season, a little bit of highlights here and there, and then, of course, we'll get to the beer portion of the MLBeers podcast. So we'll be right back. Hello, everybody. We're back for the MLBeers podcast. And, of course, we got to be talking about the second portion of the name, the beer portion of our podcast. And I have to ask, Phil, what are you having today for your beer?
Today, I'm drinking Firestone Walker's Mocha Merlin coffee-infused oatmeal stouts.
That actually does sound pretty good.
It's pretty good for like a day like today where it's kind of gray and gloomy. It's not it's not super powerful ABV, really drinkable. What I like about this is the oatmeal stout isn't usually like a dry stout. And so they add a little bit of coffee in there. It kind of makes it a little bit more bitter, and I like it.
Yeah, because usually, oatmeal stouts, are pretty smooth.
Nice.
And
as like not super creamy, but just smooth.
Yeah, it's like if you wanted, like, I guess go from a dry to, I hate to fucking use this word, excuse my language, but I guess moist. It would be like a dry Irish, then oatmeal, and then like a milk stout would probably be that. Would you say?
Yeah.
And the oatmeal stout is kind of like the middle of the three. I mean, you can have chocolate stouts and all that stuff, but mostly those three.
I was gonna say, usually when they make a chocolate stout is usually has some bitterness to it because they typically use dark chocolate.
Yeah, and sometimes that's just that's just an additive, to it. Where like an oatmeal stout is, part of your malts, and that's where it kind of becomes the difference,
Yep.
But that actually does sound pretty good, and if
you can get it, dude, it comes in 6-pack cans.
Ooh, even better. So
I love cans.
And I have to ask, you said it's the Mocha Merlin. I have to ask.
Merlin is their usual oatmeal stout.
That's what I was about to ask, if that was a year-round or a seasonal, but they were like, oh yeah, we're going to make this special, version of it. So now you answered my question, even though I
knew where you were going with it.
See, you know.
We've been doing this long enough.
We have been doing this long enough. So for me, I have to, kind of disappoint a lot of people. I'm drinking a fancy LaCroix. And the flavor is a good old pamplemousse, which is French for, I believe, for grapefruit. So if you want to be, fancy and say grapefruit in French, it's pamplemousse. But I guess it's the closest thing to sparkling water with the flavor, and the carbonation could be like beer, but definitely not. If it had to be its own category in beer, it would be like if somebody tried to take a normal American lager, a American light lager, and added grapefruit to it. Think about that for a second. Sounds horrible.
Yeah, it sounds horrible. I don't like it.
Yeah, I'm not saying that's what it tastes like, because LaCroix is, sparkling water, carbonated water with flavoring. But if it had to be, if I had to make its own beer version of that, it would definitely be a American standard light lager, or whatever the official name is, with grapefruit. And it's definitely something that I'd probably try it once just to be like, oh, somebody actually tried to make it like a light beer with grapefruit in it, but it still tastes horrible. But I have to ask you one question, and it doesn't deal with LaCroix or whatever I said. It deals with American lagers. I saw somebody on the internet the other day, I believe it was in a Facebook group that we're in, the Fangraphs Facebook group, and somebody homebrewed an American lager, and I said, I hope you didn't add any corn or rice to it. The guy answered, well, it would be wrong for me to not add corn or rice to it.
Jesus.
Because it would be the wrong, quote unquote, the wrong style of beer that he was making, which I cannot hate. He was going for a style that, he specified later on that it was kind of trying to be like an old style. And I'm just like, I just wanted to be like, not necessarily. And would I be correct for not saying not necessarily to what, American lagers don't have to have rice or corn in it?
No, it's an easy way to mass produce.
Not only that, it's an easy way to filter, too.
Yep.
And, and it's also kind of a historic thing. I might have brought it up in an earlier episode of the podcast, but the reason why Budweiser, Coors, Miller add rice or corn, depending who it is, to their beer is not only to mass produce, not only to get somewhat of the same taste every time, not only to filter the beer, but it actually was kind of a ration to other grains for, barley, wheat during World War II. And that's where it kind of, got its start, was from that. I think there was like earlier versions of it, but it became the thing to do when you were making a beer during that time. So that's why I was just wondering if I was right or he was right, if I was right or he was right. I mean, to each their own again, but it was definitely something that I was a little bit peeved that he didn't have to add rice or corn to it, and I felt a little bit disappointed, but he was making his own beer. You do whatever you want. I can't be the judge. And, again, saying that, going on, that's the end of our beer section of the podcast. But since I brought up the word judge, we're going to be talking about our favorite moments, our favorite highlights of the year. And first of all, I have to say, Aaron Judge, Cody Bellinger, the two rookies out of all of this, really, stunned and surprised a lot of people this season, especially Aaron Judge, a guy that really wasn't talked about. He was talked about some last year, but he wasn't really, this high-touted prospect. He hit, he averaged less than 25 home runs, pretty much an average hitter. But he comes out, he starts hitting, he hits 52 home runs, which is the highest rookie home run in all of history of baseball. But he also, he did well. 284 batting average, 422 on base percentage, and a 627 slugging with an OPS of 1.049. And his isolated power was a 343, his BABIP was a 357, and his WRC plus was a 173. But besides all of that, besides getting the home runs, besides having a good slash line and all that stuff, there is always the counter of that. He had 208 strikeouts, and I don't know, I really didn't look this up, but I think that might be the highest strikeout for a rookie that got, a lot of, not only a lot of at-bats, but played in over, qualified, I should say. 208 strikeouts. He swung 41% of the time and only made contact 67.6% of the time when he did swing. A guy that you tout him as...
What he made contact?
67.6%. And the funny thing is, the other people that I will talk about later on in this part had better numbers. Not only swing percentage, but contact percentage. And even though, I mean, there's other numbers that can't, touch, his offensive numbers. But it was just that he was probably the best player on both sides, where he looked great and he looked silly because of that 208 strikeouts, 52 home runs, a 284 batting average, a 30.7 K rate. Just think about that for a moment, Phil. Just let that stew.
No, because I don't like that kind of player.
I don't like that kind of player either. And
I really hope the league doesn't start going towards that.
Ooh, Phil, you better watch your mouth. You might get the league might try to find you and kill you. I don't know about that.
Yeah, I know, because they're trying to make the game more exciting, and I get it, but
yeah, you can have
striking out.
You can have better numbers.
Like, remember Tony Gwynn?
Yes. Does anybody remember him? 5.5. Literally two numbers that are synonymous with him, which is the number 19 or 20, his jersey number, and another number 5.5, which was the hitting mark, where he would always get that nice contact swing. He hit it
5.5 hole.
Yeah, 5.5 hole. Hit it between the third baseman and the shortstop. I thought it was 6.5. And then I was like, okay, I need to make sure that it's 6.5 or 5.5, and it was 5.5. And I was just like, still, 5.5 hole every time. And there was some softball games that I was like, man, I'm getting that Tony Gwynn perfect right between the third baseman and the shortstop, and I'm just like, Tony Gwynn. But another rookie,
right?
But another rookie that we have to talk about, the rookie sensation on the National League side. And a guy that we've already talked about, Cody Bellinger, hitting 39 home runs, but not as impressive as Mr. Aaron Judge. He had a 267, 352, 581 slash line with a 933 on base percentage. He had an isolated power percentage of a 315. His BABIP was 299, and his WRC plus was a 138. And this is where it's kind of get funny, because every other number is going to make him sound so much better than Aaron Judge. He had a 444, 44.4% swing percentage and a 69.6 contact percentage. Again, better numbers than Judge. He had, again, 39 home runs. He had 97 RBIs. He stole 10 bases, which was very interesting to see. He only had 128 hits. And Aaron Judge had 154 hits, I should say. But Cody Bellinger had 146 strikeouts with 64 walks, which, if you're looking at the percentages, Bellinger had a 26.6 K rate and a 11.7 walk rate, while Judge, I didn't say his walk rate, but he had an 18.7 walk rate, which there was a time being where he was feared, but then after May into June, everybody figured him out, and he just looked sloppy. He had moments of greatness near the end of the season. He found his stride, but those two, I really have enjoyed the rookies this year, and I'm glad that they have some pop in their bat.
Players are developed. When the players are coming into the league now, there's a different expectation for them.
Mm-hmm.
Years past, it's been, top-tier rookies like Bellinger and Judge. You expect them to kind of struggle their first year, maybe 2 years, but still be good.
Mm-hmm.
But they're coming into the league now just at the top of the game.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. And that's going to be happening a lot. And I mean, it's going to be, for the Dodgers, this is going to be the second year in the row that they've had a Rookie of the Year award winner. Last year was Corey Seager. Now it's going to be Cody Bellinger. And there's going to be a lot of expectations, like you said, with these rookies coming in. Everybody's now going to expect a Chris Bryant, a Bryce Harper, now Cody Bellinger and Aaron Judge type of production when they are rookies. You're not going to see rookies that are touted highly and then they're, subpar for the first 2 seasons, like Dansby Swanson, which he had a decent season, but he's developing, and that's the difference between Bellinger, Judge, Bryant, and Harper, is those guys developed and they started whacking the ball. For Dansby Swanson, not so much, and that's where it's kind of the difference maker between that. Besides, for you, Phil, what is one of your favorite highlights of the year?
My favorite highlight, it would have to be when Edson Volquez threw his no-hitter on Yuriando Ventura's birthday.
Mm-hmm.
Because, with the Chiefs and the relationship they had when they brought in Volquez,
mm-hmm.
they put his locker right next. Like, look, mentor him.
Mm-hmm.
And, Ventura, passed away this last offseason, and Volquez was able to go out and do that on his birthday. It was pretty incredible.
Yeah, it was very interesting. You don't really think about that until it's done. And, you brought up the, in our Twitter group, the article that he wrote in the Players Tribune about that whole situation. And, I think it was very interesting that a lot, when it comes to preparing for a game, it was, guys go out there, yeah, I'm going to give it 6, I'm going to give it 7, yada, 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 yada. But every, his trainer, his pitching coach, they were like, yeah, you're going to throw a no-hitter today. And it was just...
Today's the day.
Yeah.
And yeah, going, that kind of entered it, you don't see that happen. Yeah. Especially with a guy like Volquez.
Mm-hmm.
Volquez isn't the type of guy to go out and give you a full 9-inning no-hitter game.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it was just something, it was a great read. And, I think it was something that we all enjoy, we all love, and kind of, put it in the back of our minds, what we miss, Giordano, passing away earlier this year, also, Jose Fernandez. It was just when he did that, it was for him to, just reading the article, it became a emotional release because, like you said, he was right, when he was with the Royals, he was right next to Ventura's locker. They became best buds. They became brothers in a sense. And him, getting, he never really got to say goodbye to him. And, throwing a no-hitter on his birthday was kind of the emotional release for him to do that.
Yeah, and it was nice. And, it was just really, really, it was just really awesome.
I have to say, you have to say that again because you went robotic on me.
If you want to read his article, it's in the Players Tribune.
Mm-hmm.
But I just liked it as a moment because, the Royals were their 8:30 patch all year, and the Royals kind of underperformed this year.
Mm-hmm.
And, that in large part that kind of has to do with Ventura because they were missing a key part of their starting rotation.
Mm-hmm.
But with Volquez able to do what he did on his birthday and all that, it was just a really nice moment.
Yeah, it was a really great moment to see. And, is there anything else you want to say about that?
No, I don't.
Okay. For my second one, I have to say, even though I hate it, even though I disapprove of it, the numbers that you get at the end of the season, and for the first time since 2000, well, not since 2000, but the number of home runs that we've had this year, 6,105, broke the 2000 record by an astronomical number. But, which, I mean, of course, everybody fell in love with. Everybody was hitting home runs, offenses, yada, 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 greatness. But it also, again, you got to see both sides of the story. And really looking at it, the average batting average, this is the average for the whole year. The averages for each stat, 255 batting average, 324 on base percentage, which is above quote-unquote average. Slugging percentage at a 426, again, just above average. A WRC plus of 97, which is low, because 100, 100 is the average. They also 21.6 strikeout rate and an 8.5 walk rate, which is really, that range is astronomical because it's just like there's no really middle ground. You either strike out or you walk, but more than likely you'll be striking out. And then, of course, the isolated power of 171, which that's pretty much typical, and the BABIP of 300, again, which is pretty typical. But I would just, what I like about it is, the highlight of the year became the season averages. And, if you want to look back, I know that there's, I know that you can, on Fangraphs, you can look back to it. And let's, just real quick, just look back from the 2012, looking at those numbers. The numbers have just kind of stayed in that position. In 2012, it was 255 batting average, same as this year. But when it came to on-base percentage, it was 319, slugging was 405, and all that. But also, what's really interesting, the home run explosion. Everybody fell in love with that. Let's start from 2012, and then I'm going to say the 2017 number again. From 2012, 4,934, 4,661 in 2013, 4,186 in 2014, 2015, 4,909, 2016, 5,610, which that's a big jump by itself, and then this year's number, 6,105, which is a even bigger jump. But it just shows that more home runs are happening, offense is happening. From 2012 to 2017, isolated power numbers have gone up by 0.2%. WRC plus has been kind of the same. WOBA has jumped up 6%. 0.006%. Slugging has went up a lot. Just a lot of offense has been happening, but it's kind of almost to the point where it's kind of getting scary a little bit, because in 2012, 8% walk rate, 19.8 K rate. Yes, there's more walks this year, but also that margin between walk rate and K rate is still potent enough. Also, last thing I will say is that stolen bases in 2012 was 3,229. This year's numbers, 2,527. So we've seen a 600 or so decrease in stolen bases.
Yeah, and, it's kind of just a test that there's not as aggressive base running, and they're relying more on the boom or bust of the home run or strikeout.
Mm-hmm. Not a lot
because
of...
if guys
guys
are striking out at a higher rate and there's a runner on first base and that runner runs, he's most likely going to be thrown out, and it's a strike him out, throw him out, double play.
Mm-hmm. And that's kind of, another thing too. It's just like the offensive strategy, in a sense, might be going down a little bit, and just relying on their player, relying on the talent to get where they want to go. More home runs creates more, more home runs creates more runs, yada yada yada. But it just seems like the decline of everything has gone, for me at least, has gone down a bit, and I don't think it will be good for the game. I mean, home runs, awesome, gets people into the seats, want to see people hit home runs, but most games aren't not like Game 5 of the World Series. Most games are like Game 6. or game 7, where the game's already over by the second inning, or games are going to be close down to the wire. And I mean, Game 5 was close to the wire, but it wasn't, most games aren't 13-12.
No.
Not actually, I'll say 99% of those games are not 13-12, unless literally it's a Sunday game. Somehow they have the emergency pitchers in for both teams and yada, yada, yada. But that's enough of mine. What's another thing that you've liked this season, from this season?
Really, man, I can't really think of too many things off the top of my head. Like, you covered, mostly kind of like what the league went to this year.
Mm-hmm.
There wasn't, for a while, the AL wild card was a pretty intense race.
Mm-hmm.
But really, besides that, I think that was the most second exciting thing for me, was just that AL wild card race.
Yeah, and
that there was a lot of teams within that race, but eventually by second week of August, it kind of petered out.
Mm-hmm. One team started to go after another. There was moments where some teams did the waiver trades and yada, yada, yada. I mean, that's how Justin Verlander was actually acquired from, to Houston, was through a waiver trade and all that stuff. But, it kind of petered out because, again, a lot of those teams that were in a wild card hunt were also losing teams, which was ridiculous. I mean, of course, the Twins had 83 wins, but the team behind them only had, I believe it was 79 wins. So, and I understand that. And, of course, you talk about, something that doesn't come top of your head. It's because also we freaking talked the shit out of that game, out of that stuff.
Yeah, I would say we talked about some season that, there's really not a whole lot else to talk about.
It's hard to pinpoint what to talk about.
Well, we could.
Yeah.
Yeah. Hard to pinpoint.
It's hard to pinpoint.
It's just hard to pinpoint, just because
we talked about everything.
We covered it during the season. Yeah.
Yeah.
We really didn't miss a beat this season.
Which is kind of an anomaly for me because I miss most things, but it's whatever. But anyway, I guess, if you don't have any.
Speaking of it.
Yeah.
No, I guess, we're going into our off season.
Yeah, and I was just going to say real quick, since you don't have anything else to say, we do have to give a little bit of a shout out to two men that have been in the game for a very long time, Adrian Beltre and Albert Pujols, reaching milestones this year. Albert Pujols hitting over 600 home runs, which if you actually look at his home runs, he only just barely got past 600 mark with 614. He has 614 now. And then Adrian Beltre hitting over, having over 3,000 hits, which he's clear for that. And, great ambassadors to the game. Really, great ambassadors from their home countries. And I can't believe it doesn't even say that on their things. But Adrian Beltre and Albert Pujols, I believe, are both Dominicans. I know Albert Pujols is. I can't remember if Beltre's actually Puerto Rican, if I remember correctly. But anyway, both great ambassadors to their countries, to the game of baseball, and staying with the game. And even though Albert Pujols did not do so hot, this year, kind of remember that he's still not done. He had 143 hits. He had, barely a really good, batting average, just even as a DH. But he is pretty darn close to reaching the 3,000 hit mark with, right now, 2,968. And he has that possibility to see that. So that's it. That's what I've liked about this season. And there's a lot of things that we've, went through. There's things that, we probably have a list of the multitude of things that we disliked about the season, but we're not here about that. And now, kind of to our off season, what you kind of brought up, and before we talk about what we're gonna do for the MLBeers podcast, let's talk about our individual off season. What are some of the things that you're gonna do this off season? We played as close attention to possible to the season with everything that's been going on in our lives. What are some of the couple things that you're gonna go back to, if you missed anything, binge watch, Netflix and all that stuff?
Really, that's probably about it. Like, just to be nice to kind of take a break from not reading every baseball article that comes out every day.
Mm-hmm.
Even though I still probably will because, it's what I do.
Mm-hmm.
But really, it's just going to be kind of normal. Going to just hang out, work, going into the holiday season, going to be seeing some family and stuff like that. So really not going to be doing a whole lot.
And, that's kind of understandable. Do you have any books that you want to read, any baseball books or anything, any other baseball things besides reading baseball articles and, doing stuff for us, for the podcast?
Yeah, I really think the only thing I'm going to do is help my dad go through his baseball card collection.
That sounds fun and sounds intense.
Yeah, he has thousands. So
my question is, I'm guessing you're going to set them up by year and team?
Yes.
That is going to be a task like none other.
And he's already started doing it, and he has most of them, but he's been buying new cards and stuff, so pretty much just going to kind of help him out.
Mm-hmm. And I believe I don't need them because I'm not a big card collector, but if you need a nice 1992 set, I got a set for, I got it for $5 at a shop, just a thrift store pretty much. So I believe they're tops. So.
All right, see what he wants.
Yeah, see what he wants from that. If he needs to, fill out the whole 92 season, pretty sure he has every freaking card, but I'll help. I'll put a little bit of effort into it by giving you some of the baseball cards from 1992. For me though, if that's everything you wanted to say, for me though, it's going to be, working, going to be schoolage, final few months before I graduate and get all that stuff done. Hopefully graduate. More than likely I will. Then probably, baseball-wise, still read the articles and all that stuff. Finally finish my book, the book by Ben Lindbergh and Sam Miller and Ben Lindbergh. The only rule is that it has to work. And their quest of trying to use sabermetrics and advanced analytics into owning a independent team out in the West Coast, actually in Sonoma, which is kind of devastating because they have all the fires and all that stuff. But it's been a really great read. I think I'm only 3 chapters away of finishing it, and now I will have that time to do it because I won't have to watch baseball constantly, and I'll read the articles here and there. And then after that, I am still up in the air on which one to start next. I'm feeling either One Last Strike by Tony La Russa, or I'm feeling Moneyball by Michael Lewis. And I recently got that book. So I might read that before One Last Strike, And yeah, I mean, besides that, work on, out of the baseball, out of the park baseball leagues that I'm a part of and you're a part of. And, as individual wise, I think that's going to be my off season, is just all that stuff. And
there you go.
I mean, try to, get reading done and get, leagues done, get videos up and everything else, which, kind of leads to what we, for the podcast, what we're going to do and try to do. First of all, since baseball is not going to be constantly on and articles are going to be sparse unless a crap ton of players, free agents get signed and all that stuff, we're expecting to, instead of once a week, we're going to go twice a week. God, that would be a miracle. But then again, I mean, there's some podcasts that do that. We're going to go, once every 2 weeks, once every 3 weeks, depending on what's going on. We're going to start writing articles, at least once a week for the podcast on the website, to keep us relevant.
And which will probably be better than us doing a show every week.
Yeah.
Because we wouldn't have anything to talk about.
Not only that, but it would probably, it would convey our message within 5 to 15 minutes instead of 30 minutes.
Yeah.
But I think, and also it kind of leaves the opportunity that if one writes about one article and the other writes, one writes one topic and and the other person writes another topic, kind of leaves us the opportunity when we do get on the podcast, kind of go over the article a little bit and then hear the other person's rebuttal. And I'm kind of waiting. I know that you did a little bit last week, the last podcast, about my expansion stuff. But I want to hear, I want to read an article about your idea about expansion and talk about that a little bit. And then, other articles that we'll be writing, we'll be talking about that, either have rebuttals or, just talk about, about the research that we went through and all that stuff. Also, I'll be finally trying to get back into the historical showdowns, even though it does take, a long time to do those. Takes a couple hours to get those done, get them, get all the graphics up and all that. I will have the opportunity to bring that back up again and enjoy the game of baseball like you've all have through Out of the Park Baseball. Also, I will be posting videos on YouTube, not only of the historical showdown, possibly videos of our MLBeers League, which, of course, if you want to join, just ask us. Just make sure that you do have Out of the Park Baseball 18, and it's updated to the new game, which obviously it will, because you'll need that to play. Because if you don't, then it will be really difficult for you to see what's going on. Besides that, I will be posting on YouTube all the episodes on there, which will be great because I haven't posted an episode since probably episode 3, because again, it takes forever for editing and to get videos up on YouTube and yada 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 yada, save grace. But for us, we are going to try to get, we've made a great social media presence this year. I felt like we did. First thought I was going to be like, all right, we're going to, do decent. We're going to have, a couple followers here and there, give or take. Actually, for this year, we exceeded our, for me, at least, we've exceeded my expectation. I don't know about you, Phil, but definitely we have made a presence in our, in the podcast family. We were part of a network which I was not expecting to be part of. We didn't get a sponsor, but that's okay. I wasn't expecting all of that for this year. Just trying to get our feet into the water and see how everything goes, And I thought,
and
go ahead.
Just going into it, our first probably month and a half, 2 months of shows were a little rough.
Yeah, I mean,
but once we hit a stride and everything, it was comfortable and fun.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not saying it wasn't fun when we first started, but it became fun, I guess.
Yeah, because like you said, we finally had a stride. It was kind of like, I guess it would be like George Springer World Series. First couple of games, first couple of podcasts was a bit difficult because we were, it wasn't my first go around of doing a podcast, but it was definitely a first go around of having a co-host, which is great because it is difficult to talk for an hour and a half by yourself, and you're just like, what do I need to say? But, trying to figure out, our cues and all that stuff. And then once we got into April, got into May, which that would be, game 4, game 5, game 4 for George Springer. We finally hit our stride. We were, getting everything out. We were getting everything out in less than 2 hours, which was, fantastic for not only us, but for the listeners out there. Because I know there's some podcasts that go for 4 hours, but that's a whole, they do different things and all that stuff. It's been a great year with you, Phil. It's been great to have somebody.
Yes, it has.
It's been great to have somebody not only with me to do this, but actually somebody, that is really knowledgeable about the game. And that, sometimes in this day and age, it's difficult to find somebody with the time to do a podcast and be knowledgeable with the game because, we got to talk about America's game, NFL, NBA, everybody's going to that, not the MLB, not America's pastime. And that's where, it's been great to have somebody to talk to about this and, for us to enjoy the game of baseball and go through the motions. And I really appreciated that you wanted to be, I appreciated that you asked me. Let's get that right, because you asked if you wanted to do a show. Let's get that right. You were actually the person to want to do the podcast. It wasn't me. I thought about doing a podcast. I was up in the air about it, but you were the person to really push me over the edge, and I really, really appreciate that, and I've enjoyed the ride so far, and let's make it another great year. But of course, we're not done with this. For this off season is just really, it's early. We still got winter. We still have.
It's way too early in the off season.
Way too early.
I don't think we're gonna see any like Kendrys Morales signing in November or anything like that this year.
Mm-hmm. We're gonna wait till winter meetings.
Class.
Yeah, we're gonna wait till winter meetings. We're gonna be waiting, and most of these shows that I'm expecting that we're gonna have are not gonna be just normal, hour 30 to 2 hours. I think our shows are gonna be, an hour 15 to an hour, because we're gonna be going through stuff, and we're going to hit everything as fast as we can. And we're going to be waiting 2 weeks for our next episode, but I know that we have enough to do a full episode. We're going to be talking, mostly managers, coaches that have been picked up, changing hands, all that stuff. And especially just the early free agents and, free agency that, qualifying offers came in and they accepted all that stuff. But yeah, do you have anything to say? Because I know that I'm, sometimes a blabbermouth.
And that's fine, because I'm not, and you summed it up very well. There's not a whole lot else I can say about it besides thank you for, doing this with me, and, we're going to keep it rolling.
Yeah, and keep it on rolling for another year, and depending on what's going on with life, I don't see us slowing down besides the off season, but I know when it's spring training starts, everything is going to gear up and we are going to get going. So anyway, for the MLBeers podcast, I have to say, if you're listening to us on our website, we are also on iTunes, SoundCloud, TuneIn, and in a couple of weeks, YouTube. And if you didn't hear before the podcast or totally missed it while we were talking about, our year in review, we are part of the Tangent Bound Network. And Phil, you know that more than I do. I know they have a multitude of genres, dealing with, pop culture to wrestling and all that stuff. You know that more about me. Give a little summary about them.
And, that's kind of what it is. It's a free network, and the guy that runs it, Mark, we emailed a couple times, a very nice guy. Mm-hmm. And, if you're just getting started, that network is a good resource for you. Mm-hmm. Because it gives a platform to you, and it gives you people you can reach out to with questions and concerns, or just really anything to deal with your podcast.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, most definitely on that. And, if you want to contact us, depending on either a baseball topic you want us, to talk about, us to, bring up a certain thing, a certain hiring, certain this, certain that, hell, even to be part of our, MLBeers League. We have if you want to contact us for that, our email is majorleaguebeers@gmail.com. We also are on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and Untapped under the whole MLBeers moniker. And again, if you don't know what Untapped is kind of the beer version of social media, or beer. That sounds correct.
That'd be the best way to put it.
Where it's pretty much, it's kind of like Facebook, but instead of sharing, stupid selfies with dumbass filters, and if I don't think I'm gonna apologize for that. Usually, I try to apologize if I'm incorrect about things, but I'm not gonna apologize for that. But it's pretty much, instead of sharing all that stuff, you share what beer you've had, what you like about it if you want, or pros and cons about it if you want. There's a rating system. You can post a picture of the beer that you're having and what glass you're having it in, which is always exciting. Sooner or later, I need to get back into that. And, if you want to contact us individually, my Twitter is real_AWS13. And Phil, what is yours?
At Philco816.
So again, folks, the last swing of the bat, the last pitch to go across the plate, the last catch of the season has happened. We are in the off season now, where everybody is curling up to the fire, well, probably to computers and waiting for the next article, but curling up to the computer, drinking some spiked hot cocoa, or for us, let's just go straight up beer, and enjoy the moments of winter. And I cannot remember the poem that I believe Walt Whitman said. But baseball is like seasons, where, where spring hope eternal, then the summer, and then the fall, the dying moments, the end of it all, and then the winter, and then right back before you know it, baseball's back. We're like phoenixes. We're ready to go. The end is the beginning. But anyway, for us here at the MLBeers podcast, our motto, our creed, our saying to end the 2017 MLB season: win or lose, there is always booze.